Hey guys, what's up? Alright, it's Double Deuce back. Well, I said I was going to give you an update video on the combination of parts that I use on the HDP 407 with the Toyan motor. So, stay tuned and we'll go through the parts and pieces and the procedure. Hey, welcome back everybody. So, I said I was going to get a video up on the combination of parts that I use to convert the HDP 407 into a Toyan 4-stroke nitro crawler. And I've had a lot of reservations about going one way or the other, and I tried to kind of stay in the middle as far as crawling capabilities and light bashing, I should say. So to start off with, I finally got the motor situated in the thing. I had to make some tubing brackets on the bottom here. I'll show you right here what I did. If you can get down in there and see I used 5/16 brake tubing, and I just kind of bent it, made a cross member, and flattened it out in the center. And here we go, right in there. And then I made two supports to come out to an aluminum bracket that I had made right here on both sides. One's on the top, one's steps down and turns up. And I did that for the simple fact that the Revo transmission, it has a lot to offer as far as disc brake, second gear. It's everything's in a nice little one little package, but it's kind of oddly shaped. And when you set it in straight, it brings the drive shaft over here. And the problem with these trucks, if you've ever noticed, your front drive shaft's really short on these things. And for the reason of, when you collapse the suspension, you see it moves back. All right, so, and then when under hard acceleration, when you're really jamming on this thing, the rear end pulls forward. If you can look in the drive shaft there, you see it'll pull out, you see, and it does that. So I'm working on that right now as we speak. I'm going to try to take an HDP 407 shaft and convert it to fit inside there, because I guess a leaf spring truck or car has what they call axle wrap. So when you're tearing into it, the axle wants to tilt forward because the wheels are pulling it, so it pulls it down. And then the back axle, it wraps up in the air, at a pretty steep angle, Now in the back, you can put ladder bars on there or whatever, but these, they actually did have them lateral bars on there, but everybody takes them off for crawling. So another thing that I had a issue with on this was my gear mesh, keeping my clutch and my spur gear from either stripping or binding up. Because here's why. Where these frame rails come in, they turn outward. So that gives this truck a flexible movement in the front. And being that the motor is mounted to the front here, and my gearbox is mounted back here, if the thing flexed to the left, it would open my mesh up and it would strip the teeth off. And then if it twisted to the right, it would bind the thing right up and stall the motor. So that's why I had made those tubing brackets. I'm going to get a good shot on these things for you, for underneath the thing, where you can see it. There's all kinds of leaves and shit falling out on it. Okay, I'm going to turn and get a close-up on it here so you guys can see it. Okay, now I used the two existing holes in the bottom of the oil pan of the motor. There's two threaded holes there, and I just put studs in there, and then I put lock nuts on top of it. And then I brought it back to here on both sides where it mounts to the front bolts of the transmission to keep from twisting. Now, if you used like a Trailfinder 2 or some of the other aftermarket frames that are solid, see, these are a C-channel inside here, so they're hollow. Where like the TF2 is it's a solid rail, so they're very stiff and they don't twist at all. And that right there would probably be giving you a better, stable mount to mount the pieces in. So I got that figured out. Like I said, I'm working on the dry shaft. I'm using a 14 tooth clutch bell, and I had a 38 tooth on here that comes stock with the Revo, and I ordered a 40, and they do make a 42, and they do make metal ones too. So I'm gonna look into, now that I've tested it out, I want to do a metal hardened steel, probably a 40 or 42 tooth. At the 38 tooth, it's faster than the stock HDP 407 with a 7.4 volt battery. First gear is about as fast as the HG is in third gear. Okay. And then it's cool because this shifts into second and it builds even more speed, but then it becomes highly unstable when you do that, because I'm surprised that it handles so well now as it is. I'll get some more videos of it running. We've had I don't know, this nasty ass storm up here. I don't know if it's like a nor'easter or whatever they call the thing, but it's been nothing but wind, rain, and destroying all my property. So I'll get some more, I took it out today, in between, wind blowing and whatnot's out there and houses blown by, and I burned a couple of tanks of fuel through it. And I did mess around with some things I'll get to on the motor in a second. But now on the back, I just put aluminum plate back here so I can have a battery pack. I'm using an old Tractus receiver on the thing because it's basically, receiver. I'm not tickled with the antenna. I'm trying to get away from those things, but I did order a cheap 6-channel radio that I'm going to try to convert into this thing to, go from there, to bring some more options into it. Now, I have a switch that I have, I put in. This basically goes up into the body, and so does the switch. The switch goes in behind that cap mod that I did. So, you just turn it on and you got your power, and when she gets warmed up, you just shut it off. So it's an easy thing. You just reach in behind the truck, snap it off. And I do want to hook this up to a radio channel, so I can just do it. I got to do turn the switch on, start it from the radio, and turn the switch off after the glow plug's heated up. Now, I did make a kind of a hacked up exhaust system for it. I don't know, some of my prior videos, I mentioned that I had made a muffler from my old Nitro Bruiser way back in the 80s. So I took a piece of copper nickel brake tubing, 1/4 inch, and kind of formed it inside, used a couple of rubber hoses as splices. And here's the muffler I made. I made it out of brass, and I brought in the pipe all the way to almost the end here, and this one back over to here to, to kind of give it some back pressure to and quiet it down a bit. And I got another piece of tubing, rubber hose back here that comes out to my tailpipe with use an old wind chime. If you find a cheap wind chime, they got some pretty nice aluminum stuff. You can buy them things at them knick-knack stores and stuff, and I use that a lot in my hobby. So now getting to the muffler on this thing, what I did was I experimented today with this, okay? Because it runs great when the glow plug's ignited and all that stuff. When you got power to it. When you shut power off, they do drop a little bit, but so did my RPM. And being that there's not a whole lot of RPM on this thing, I wanted it to have a nice clean rev all the way through. And when the switch is on and there's power to the glow plug, it has a nice clean rev. Now, I changed the glow plug today, and I went and got some fresh fuel and put that in. And believe it or not, I'm running 15% nitro in the thing, and it's it's actually a little bit better on fuel. I mean, the 20% it'll blow right through that tank like nothing, and where the 15% it lasted quite a while actually, to the point where I was getting bored, and but I was running it through grass today, and that's what I wanted to accomplish. If it'll run through like thick grass, then it'll climb. Okay, I really don't have any cool places to go where I live here to go climbing. I drove around today for about an hour and a half looking for different spots, but it's just so overpopulated up here, and there's tree huggers everywhere, and you break this thing out, and boy, they get all. You got 3 people that love it and 10 people that were appalled by it because it's noisy. So anyway, back to the muffler. I'm gonna pull this battery off here and get this right out of here so I can flip this thing around a little bit and make things a lot easier for everybody. I tried to keep the wiring separate to keep it in the body, so it's out of harm's way down inside here. I'll give you guys a close-up of how I had set this thing up. Zoom in on it here, where you can see I moved the fuel tank to there because I had it back hanging off the left side here in front of these batteries, and so moving it forward, it really helped it out quite a bit. And you can see the aluminum plates that I had made. I wrapped them around and brought them inward, and this one here just kind of comes over. Get a close up on this here, on this side of the plate. This one here just kind of it tilts down a little bit because I tilted the transmission so I could eliminate my front drive shaft binding. So it's just regular hobby grade aluminum, and I just bent it up real nice, and I used the existing holes for the cross member, and I dropped the cross member down. I just put the bushing inside it, and I drilled a hole in the aluminum plate and put the screw down just to pull it up here. Now I will make pieces here once I get a determining working setup that works great. So now up here, the cool thing about what I liked about the Revo was, and the Traxxas transmissions, was you can adjust the second gear just by picking this thing up here. Don't I screwed this up big time, and it took me hours and hours to figure it out, because the second gear clutch in these Traxxas transmissions don't have a factory setting. They're all set differently. They're all set on a dyno, and the dyno spins at a certain RPM, and that's when they keep adjusting it so it'll click up. So you can't say, oh, this, you turn it in 3 screws or 4 screws, you don't. If you do this, you turn it in and it raises your shift point. I'm telling you right now, if you use this setup with this transmission, you don't need to raise the shift points, because it ain't going to shift, because it don't have enough RPM in this motor to shift it. This motor has 1/3 of the RPM as the Traxxas 15 motor. So that created some clutch problems. So I'm running a 3-shoe RC all-wheel drive nitro clutch in the thing. Is for an 8 scale, and I had drilled 2 holes in the flywheel and mounted it to the flywheel clutch that I got from Sterling Engine or Engines DIY. And I had to make that work. I mean, if I had to do it again, I'd probably just order one of their 2-pin clutches and try that. But the problem is, you're running four-wheel drive. You're running front and rear, you know, rear end. So it's a hell of a strain on that clutch. That's why I went to the 40-tooth spur gear, because that really freed this thing up. So it's got some, you know, a lot of low end torque, and it jumps and takes off. Now getting back to shifting, when you do adjust the transmission, turn it like 1/8 of a turn at a time, okay, and just keep trying it. That's what I did. And when you finally hear it hit second gear, you can turn it in to raise the shift point, so it's, you know, got a higher RPM, or you can just turn it back a little bit to lower it. Now I got mine where it pulls off once it starts revving. It hits second gear. I'm kind of happy with where I need it. You guys may want to personally set that setting depending on where you're running your truck and all that stuff. And if you're rock crawling with the thing, you know, it's not no heavy duty rock crawler. Okay, it'll climb up over stuff. Remember, it's an experiment. So to all you haters out there that you know, have left comments on my page and everything, you know, this is all an experiment. And I mean, I could easily have not used this. I could have got the V4 and put it in there, or I could have got a, you know, like a 21, you know, buggy racing motor and put it in there too. But like I say, this is all because of this motor. It's a low RPM working motor, like a normal car would have. It's, you know, we don't have all race motors in our everyday transportation or our off-road stuff a lot of times. But there is ways to improve the performance of the motor. Okay, one, when I was sitting there today trying to figure out my fuel problem, I read this. It's this Toyan Power Boost box, okay? And I thought about it for a minute, and I'm like, two strokes, you know, they need a tune pipe, but I mean, I've never heard of a four stroke needed some kind of a boost box or something in the exhaust system. I know they work good with a little bit of back pressure, but that's about it. Because a four stroke motor is basically one gigantic air pump. The more that air you can push through that thing, and the more fuel, you know, the faster it goes. And until you come up with like valve float or, you know, anything like that. So inside here, there's a bunch of chambers, okay? And it kind of comes over here and comes down, got a dip down, and it's got a dip up. It kind of moves the exhaust around before it exits out the back. Now, I had cut off that little muffler, okay, just cut a piece of it off and just threaded it in, put a piece of hose on there to connect mine. Now, this is real important, okay, so pay attention here. Let's see if I can't get something in there to see. Okay, to those of you who have already already familiar with this motor, right next to that little piece of pipe down, let me get that, that's why I hate antennas. Okay, right down next to that little piece of pipe down in here, there is a nipple for you to pressurize your gas tank. All right. Now the thing is, there's not enough room to put any kind of a hose on there and have a nipple for it at the same time. So here's what I did. I drilled a hole up top, okay, on the back side here, and I moved the nipple up there, okay. Don't do that, whatever you do, because that was a lot of my fuel problem. Because it being this thing has chambers in it, okay, it comes out here, it's an open box, and it comes into a path down here. And that's where I had my nipple. I thought, oh great, it'll pop right here. It'll give a nice, nice boost of pressure to my fuel tank. But here's what happens. Yeah, it does that. It gives it a nice little pressurized boost. But when the exhaust comes out here, it sucks it in. So the whole time inside I'm watching like these little bubbles go back and forth in my fuel tube there, my pressure tube, and I was like, what the hell? Why is it doing that? Well, that's because it's drawing a vacuum with the gases, pulse, vacuum, pulse, vacuum. So that's what this boost box is all about. So me, I can't leave well enough alone, so I took this thing right off, and because I'm seeing this as complications. Two strokes, you need some kind of an echo system to bring the charge back into the cylinder, where four strokes really don't. They got a valve for that. But when I took it off, the performance of this motor, it jumped right up quite a bit, actually. I was really impressed with it, but it was loud as hell. And so I took a piece of rubber tubing, and inside the box itself, there is a coupler that threads into the head that holds this tight. I took that coupler out, took the box off, put the coupler back in, and I put a piece of hose over it. And it ran great. I mean, it would rev right up, and it was, I was really impressed with the difference it made in that. And but the problem is, I got to get some silicone tubing. I do want to run it without that, because illuminating this box, gives it a lot of space over here. You free up, especially if you're trying to wedge it in, because I had to bend these shock towers out just a little bit to fit this motor in here. And so that was, like I say, pretty good. So being on the old Bruiser back here, I had the nipple in the muffler, and I just ran it back here, and I just totally plugged that all off, so I just have an exhaust exit there. That's it. I don't have any back pressure tubing going back in there. But so far this combination's working good. I would like to try to use a bigger spur gear on here and then go with a taller tire. The reason I went with these tires is because from past experiences, if you ever seen my brushless conversion on my other HCP 407, to run a small flatter tire on a thing, it keeps them from rolling over. It brings the center of gravity down a little bit, and plus there's not a lot of sidewall to roll over to flip the truck over, so you're not chasing around picking it up. But so that's where I'm at now. Any other questions, comments, or anything like that, feel free to hit me up, and trying to figure what else that you guys had asked me. I appreciate all you subscribers out there, and if you guys want to build one of these things, it's a simple combo. You buy the motor. If you get an HGP 407 roller or a frame, you got it started, and get yourself a Traxxas Revo tranny, a 42 spur gear, and your radio of choice. I mean, there's not a whole lot of other than that. It's more rearranging everything. Some brake tubing to make your own kind of a cross member. There are two holes on the side of the engine. There are two small 3mm holes on both sides. And what I did was I took 3/16 brake tubing and a long, really long, I think they were about 40mm. I think they were the 3mm screws, and I put them in there, and then I slipped the brake tubing over top of it, and then tightened these nuts down to, squish it into the frame so the motor was solid. That's when I noticed the twist I was getting. That's when I burned up the spur gear. It was fun, but I mean, it's not no powerhouse, but it's, it needed some, some structure up here. That's why I did the brake tubing, and connect the brake tubing to the transmission, back that way. It's all one unit. And now I did notice they do make, I just seen the thing online briefly for your RC boats. They do make a cradle. It's a cradle for a nitro motor, and it has a clutch bell hooked right to the cradle. And so when you put that all together, now all you have to do is make two mounts off the side of the cradle, because you're basically I'm relying on the frame rails that are C-channel and weak. A friend of mine, he did mention I should have used my RC four-wheel drive what's that, Bruiser Ruptor, because it has the solid rails, but those are kind of rare, and you know, HCP 407s, you can buy them all over the place now, and I didn't want to alter that truck any. I bought the thing used off a guy, and he did a great job on it, and basically I don't want to mess it up, you know. So anyway, like I say, any other questions or comments, feel free to hit me up. I'll get some more video time or running up here as soon as the weather breaks here in the next day or so, and you can expect that. That'll be cool. And I'll get some, even if it's on you know, pavement or something for now, just so you guys can see how it performs and how it handles it. I'm very, very happy with the build. You know, I'm a gearhead. I mean, I'd love it to be more powerful, but like I say, you know, every man must know his limitations. So I want it to be a dual purpose rock crawler, and I want it to be a fun, you know, basher. And so I do want to figure out to put a transfer case in the back of this thing. I may have enough room to put one of those 2-speed transfer cases in to cut the gearing down even lower. So, you know, put some sticky tires on it and see if we can melt the clutch, you know, and try to climb over some heavy obstacles. But anyway, you guys have a good one. Like I say, thanks for all the support, and you know, I'll keep building them, and you keep watching, and everything's cool. So, all right, guys, adios.